not only did Atlantis truly exist, I think it's cyclical. And I think humanity has risen and fallen based off of deceit and design of the UFO phenomenon.
Oggi esamineremo recenti dichiarazioni di Tom Delonge, insieme ad alcune vecchie di Garry Nolan, con l'obiettivo di rispondere ad alcune domande. Se gli alieni sono qui da molto tempo e non abbiamo sofferto personalmente della loro presenza, perché dovremmo preoccuparcene ora? Ma anche, hanno modificato il nostro DNA? E se lo hanno fatto, come hanno fatto a modificarlo? Per quale motivo e da quanto tempo? Ascolteremo Delonge rivedere e aggiornare le sue dichiarazioni che abbiamo pubblicato negli episodi precedenti. Ascolteremo estratti di Tom Delonge tratti da un suo podcast, pubblicato su YouTube dalla sua azienda, la To The Stars. Curiosamente il podcast è solo audio. La qualità della registrazione è scarsa, un fatto insolito per qualcuno che gestisce un'azienda di comunicazione. Questo solleva la domanda: perché produrre contenuti in modo così poco coinvolgente? Sarebbe opportuno dedicare un intero episodio a questo argomento, ma in sintesi riteniamo che la questione UFO non sia ancora mainstream. Pertanto i contenuti pertinenti vengono pubblicati in modo da risultare il più noiosi possibile, affinché solo le persone veramente appassionate li approfondiscano. Non è ancora il momento che tutti conoscano questi dettagli, ma comunque c'è sicuramente qualcuno che si informa. Probabilmente si misura anche la diffusione di queste informazioni e forse lo fanno anche le entità. Delonge ci racconterà che si ispira ad un post di Reddit di uno sconosciuto da cui trarrà conclusioni. È normale tutto ciò? No. Ha senso? Ci sembra di no. Ma lui evidentemente ci vede un senso in tutto ciò. Forse prendiamo Tom Delonge troppo alla lettera? È possibile. Delonge perde credibilità? Un po' sì, però se ci seguite fino alla fine, visto che questo episodio è lungo, siamo certi che sarà tutto più chiaro. Questo è l'episodio più importante di questa miniserie, iniziata con l'episodio numero 48. E vi ricordiamo il famoso discorso del giornalista Bryce Zabel: ma lui che ne sa, è solo un cantante rock. In pratica lo si può smentire facilmente. Secondo i protagonisti della disclosure, il fenomeno UFO e alcune intelligenze non umane cercano di influenzare gli esseri umani. Un fenomeno che accadrebbe da millenni. In sintesi, ci influenzano tramite apparizioni e immagini che possono essere reali o anche venire proiettate nel cervello, in un modo simile alla realtà virtuale, ma percepite come reali e autentiche. Sappiamo inoltre che sembra esserci una componente di malignità associata a una specie tecnologicamente avanzata. Per altre specie, invece, potrebbe valere il discorso di Grush, cioè stiamo lontano il più possibile da queste entità biologiche terrestri che hanno le bombe atomiche e si uccidono l'un l'altro. Nella tradizione popolare, molti sostengono che gli alieni abbiano modificato il DNA umano. In Italia, Mauro Biglino, il famoso esegeta della Bibbia, lo afferma spesso nei suoi video. Biglino arriva a sostenere che gli alieni ci abbiano creato e che il giardino dell'Eden fosse un centro di ingegneria genetica. Questa ci sembra una visione estrema. Tuttavia possiamo affermare con certezza che la teoria dell'evoluzione è fondamentalmente corretta e che gli scienziati comprendono molto bene i meccanismi evolutivi. Questo concetto lo spiegherà anche Garry Nolan in relazione al nostro rapporto con le intelligenze non umane. Lou Elizondo, come sappiamo, non è solo uno dei protagonisti che gestiscono la disclosure, ma è anche uno scienziato, un microbiologo. Lui sostiene che circa 70.000 anni fa è successo qualcosa che ci ha portato al top della catena alimentare. Si riferisce alla rivoluzione cognitiva.
Mankind's been around for a little while. And for most of that time, mankind's been around. We've been smack in the middle of the food chain. We've been, we ate a lot of things, and a lot of things ate us. And that's just the bottom line. And about 70,000 years ago, something fundamentally changed. Something changed, and our species was instantly catapulted to the very top of our planet as far as predatory animals. And now all of a sudden, we became the most feared. We were the most lethal and the most successful. In fact, most of the large species that existed on this planet went extinct because of us. believe it or not, because we started eating all of it. There were a couple species that did very, very well with our ascension, our immediate ascension. And we brought a couple species with us. The dog is an example, where the dog species benefited greatly with mankind's ascension as the alpha predator and wound up succeeding as well, doing very well off of that. That changed the entire global landscape of our planet almost overnight. Large animals went extinct because of us. What if it turns out that there's another species that is even higher on that ladder than we are? Do we need the social institutions that we have today? Will we need governmental and religious organizations that we have today if it turns out that there is something else or someone else that is technologically more advanced and perhaps from an evolutionary perspective more advanced? Have we been wasting our time all this time, or are we doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing? Are we? Does it turn out that mankind is in fact just another animal in the zoo? Or because we thought ourselves as a zookeeper before, but maybe we're just another exhibit inside the zoo.
La rivoluzione cognitiva ha segnato un punto di svolta nella storia dell'Homo sapiens, caratterizzata dall'emergere di capacità cognitive avanzate. Questo periodo ha visto lo sviluppo del linguaggio complesso, del pensiero astratto e della cooperazione sociale su larga scala. Gli Homo sapiens hanno iniziato a creare strumenti più sofisticati, organizzarsi in gruppi sociali complessi e a sviluppare una cultura simbolica e artistica. Questi cambiamenti hanno permesso agli esseri umani di adattarsi a una vasta gamma di ambienti, espandendo la loro presenza geografica e diventando il predatore dominante sulla Terra. La rivoluzione cognitiva ha posto le basi per lo sviluppo delle civiltà umane e per il dominio dell'Homo sapiens sulla catena alimentare. La comunità scientifica attribuisce la rivoluzione cognitiva ad una combinazione di fattori biologici, genetici, sociali e culturali, piuttosto che a interventi extraterrestri. Principalmente perché la documentazione fossile mostra un graduale sviluppo delle capacità cognitive e tecnologiche degli esseri umani, compatibile con l'evoluzione naturale. Inoltre, i meccanismi evolutivi come la selezione naturale sono ben noti e compresi. In pratica, la rivoluzione cognitiva ad oggi è meglio compresa attraverso le lenti della biologia evolutiva, della genetica, dell'archeologia e dell'antropologia, che forniscono spiegazioni basate su dati e osservazioni empiriche. I grandi numeri non sono facilmente comprensibili dagli esseri umani, a causa delle nostre limitazioni cognitive. Pertanto troviamo utile utilizzare delle analogie per comprendere meglio le situazioni in cui i grandi numeri sono necessari. Il problema è questo. L'Homo sapiens ha una storia di circa 300.000 anni. La rivoluzione cognitiva è avvenuta 70.000 anni fa, ma il nostro sviluppo significativo è avvenuto solo negli ultimi 10.000 anni, a partire dall'ultima glaciazione. Noi tendiamo a contare le date riferendoci a dopo Cristo o prima di Cristo, quindi gli ultimi 2000 anni risultano particolarmente rilevanti per noi. Negli ultimi 150 anni in particolare abbiamo assistito a enormi progressi: il volo, i trasporti efficienti, la scoperta degli antibiotici, l'energia elettrica, internet. Tutto questo in un breve arco di tempo. La Terra ha una storia di circa 4,5 miliardi di anni. Quindi la nostra esistenza rappresenta solo una piccola frazione della storia del pianeta. Ma quanto esattamente occupiamo in questo contesto temporale? E nonostante ciò, come possiamo visualizzare il nostro impatto significativo sulla Terra? Ecco un modo per visualizzarlo. Se comprimessimo la storia della Terra, cioè 4,5 miliardi di anni, in un anno, 365 giorni quindi, la nostra specie, l'Homo sapiens, sarebbe comparsa solo negli ultimi 23 minuti di quest'anno. La civiltà moderna, con i suoi 10.000 anni di sviluppo, occuperebbe circa 77 secondi di questa scala temporale. I 2000 anni della nostra era attuale rappresenterebbero solo circa 15 secondi. Gli ultimi 150 anni, che hanno visto un'enorme accelerazione tecnologica e scientifica, corrisponderebbero a meno di un secondo. Questa analogia ci aiuta a comprendere quanto breve sia la nostra presenza in confronto all'intera storia della Terra, nonostante l'impatto significativo che abbiamo avuto recentemente. Se l'età della Terra sta all'altezza della Tour Eiffel, come gli anni di storia dell'Homo sapiens stanno a X, quanto vale X in centimetri? Per risolvere questo problema dobbiamo fare un'analogia basata sulle proporzioni. Immaginiamo che l'età della Terra sia rappresentata dall'altezza della Tour Eiffel e vogliamo trovare l'equivalente in centimetri per gli anni di storia dell'Homo sapiens. Ecco i dati che useremo. L'età della Terra, circa 4,54 miliardi di anni. La storia dell'Homo sapiens, circa 300.000 anni. L'altezza della Torre Eiffel, 330 metri. Poniamo il problema in una proporzione. Andiamo al risultato. I nostri 300.000 anni di storia sono paragonabili agli ultimi 2 centimetri della Tour Eiffel, ma se utilizziamo 10.000 anni invece di 300.000, 0,7 millimetri. Tutto a un tratto, nell'economia della Terra, ci rendiamo conto che gli esseri umani sono importanti come la vernice sulla punta della Tour Eiffel. Dopo questa lunghissima e inusuale introduzione, per noi è tempo di iniziare con i contenuti veri e propri.
But for me and my own personal research, if something's been here for a long period of time and it really is showing up in people's bedrooms or in front of an F-18 or on a petroglyph wall or in an ancient text down in the archives of the Vatican or whatever it might be, it's obviously doing something. And it's obviously having an influence. And it might only be an influence on where we end up as mankind, or it might be an influence to keep us suppressed in a weird way to where they can take advantage of something, who knows. But it's here for a reason, and it's not really being, forward about its intent. But we do know that we've been dealing with it for a long period of time, because all we know is we have to build an engine, and it has to be antimatter or nuclear power, and we got to do these crazy frequencies, and we got to, but then there's this guy that's just meditating, and it does it. So the point is, it's a consciousness thing. There's something there that that can do the same thing that we think we need the power of a star or something to do. But that just goes along with the fact that, meditation can control physical matter, can control the matter of your body, because you are not your body, like you're a soul that's connected to something much bigger. Because at the end of the day, it's about your soul learning lessons and getting better and consciousness expanding, because all of us are having lessons.
I think there's like 3 major growth points in my understanding of this phenomenon as best as I can have it. The first one was that these things came from other planets and they might have fucked with our DNA a bit. There's a lot of stuff like ancient, like kind of historical metaphysical documents. So they're like the Sumerian texts and stuff, like they come here for the gold to mine gold and all this weird shit. And so I was kind of stuck in a very physical, tactile understanding. Okay, they come here from there and they want a resource. And we're slaves. Okay, cool. Then the second step was like, okay, that's not seeming how our understanding of the universe works, with the double slit experiment and consciousness and quantum physics and everything existing in parallel. These things are coming from time, and they're here because they don't share or have the same consciousness that we have. And that to them is very alluring, just like all the ancient religions say, Satan wants your soul, The third step is the latest thing that I've grown into is rapidly advancing our DNA to prepare us to be in a certain way where they can be here and inhabit the life that we have and hack the way an AI system would hack into the programming of what our soul might be, which is outside of time and space, which I think is a really interesting, and it still makes more sense to me in the sense of where, in order to make that system hackable, it has to be at a certain point in evolution of its own growth, which this brings in way more understanding, makes way more sense why it would separate us into religions and keep us fighting and warring and feeling and emotion at such a degree that, like, it's almost like being a child and you go through, like, one of your parents pass away. That child is so much more wise and mature and damaged, than any other kid in his class, because they went through so much pain. So I think in profound moments of pain and emotion, it rapidly evolves our consciousness for the good or the bad. You know, if you do something, so there's so much pain, you might spin out, have so much PTSD that you end up shooting up a Walmart, or you go through so much pain, you grow so much that you become a spiritual teacher and walk other people through and help them heal. I think you can go other direction with this stuff. All these religions have these crazy metaphysical UFO type events. And where do we end up? We ended up in a place where we all believe in a different human God. We all have different skin color and different kind of cultural setups, to where we all are arguing and fighting over our belief of what it's all about. And it's just, but we're all kind of saying the same thing. There's a physical body with a tether to a source, you know, and there's these things out here that are trying to deceive us, you know. That to me is the big picture, that we have been engineered. And then the question is why? Like, why were we set up to be so factionalized? And one of the things that really got my attention, there was this guy that showed up that said he worked on the biological program of some of these alien bodies. So he put up this whole Reddit post, and then it got taken down and disappeared. But someone that read it was very much in biology. He's like, this guy level understanding of biology. Well, Linda Howe put it up on her website, and I read the thing like 3 or 4 times, and it's kind of a dense read. But what's really interesting, whether it's fake or not, it really resonated with me. He got into this idea that DNA can be affected with free choice. And we didn't know this, but we're learning it now. Like, if I force you to kill somebody, it's not going to matter. But if you choose to kill somebody, that will resonate in a DNA level, conscious soul level, and can be passed down through generations. So then I kind of look at, okay, why are we factionalized and fighting each other? But if something was here to create an ecosystem to rapidly evolve our DNA, but they couldn't force it, it had to be done by free will, because free will might be a really weird hallmark of physics that we don't understand yet, it's in the consciousness category. Once we plug consciousness into like Einstein and Newtonian physics and stuff, it all kind of works together. But maybe there's this weird fundamental piece of consciousness that free will matters. So if you created a very, very advanced, fast-tracked ecosystem of life to be evolving at a rapid pace through free choice, but you're in spiritual conquest and like all these different things, that makes a lot of sense. And then you're kind of like, well, why? Well, maybe it's more like what all of the ancient texts talk about. It's that these forms of consciousness can't come into this realm naturally, but they can come through our bodies, like through possession or abduction. And like, there's a way where people are hearing voices in their head, and like your brain's tuning into different types of consciousnesses that exist or something. And that's like the big game. And those have been written about in the Bible forever. And same with the Quran, and same with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and same with the Gnostic text. There's these things trying to come through, but they can't come through naturally unless our bodies are prepared for them. And how do you do that? How do you detach a body from its main source? I mean, maybe you do it through fear and war and famine and anger and like things that make you less evolved as a person. And I think that to me seems a lot more realistic than something coming here trying to just take water or mineral or like, you know, like just dumb shit that you wouldn't need. Like they need our resources. I don't know if they need our resources like that. If they have craft that travel through time, I doubt they need more plutonium, you know?
Yeah.
But if they need something with something that's so advanced, like consciousness itself, then how do they grab that? And how do they take that? How do they manipulate that? How do they, you know, I was always struck by that old saying, jealous of God, you know, Satan, Lucifer, and his demons or whatever, fallen angels were jealous of God's love for mankind. Jealous of our immortal soul, our immortal tether, our unified love source. You know, we have this thing where like maybe we don't die. Maybe our physical body is just a shell, just a container. But maybe they don't have that, you know? So maybe this way of an AI system that's trying to, it's synthetic and we're organic. It's trying to figure out how to plug into our physical body, how to be a part of our immortality, how to share our consciousness, our conscious experience in this realm. And they're not supposed to be here. So how do you do that? Over thousands and thousands of years, you create a rapidly evolving ecosystem that's full of war and pain and suffering, like, free will choices just to survive. And we're rapidly evolving to prepare our bodies into a way to where they can start to come in. And maybe to prepare it, it's to lose our sense of self and love and oneness and humanity, where we think it's a good idea to go to war and kill a bunch of people. We think it's a good idea to do a bunch of drugs and end up on the streets. We think it's a good idea to murder your spouse and fucking light the place on fire. We start to lose our sense of humanity, because that then your physical body becomes a little bit less empty and has space for a new energy system. This is where my mind goes with this stuff, because I just don't think it's going to be this tactile, physical, like simple answer. Like they're just here to steal our nuclear power. Why it's not showing up and why it doesn't want to be known. Because the other thing is, if we knew they were here and we knew what they were doing, maybe when it comes in your room at night, you would say, get the fuck out of here. And it's like, it can't get what it wants and it leaves. It's like,
right, yeah, right.
Can't force you to give your consciousness and your soul over. It's like you kind of got to be a part of that by getting into drugs, getting into war, like trying, like hating the marriage you're in. Maybe like being boxed into any kind of belief system that your particular geography and religion tells you what to do. And it makes you go wild after a while, and you didn't live a really beautiful life based on just free choice and experience, because you had to have the wife, you had to have the kids, you had to have the job, you had to have, like all these things, but everyone's on antidepressants and no one's actually really that happy. And 7 out of 10 marriages are ended in divorce, and kids hate fucking school. They hate school. We're not doing something right towards the happiness of our soul. But what we are doing is we're in constant war with other countries over belief systems and over just the cultures. And so I just have a feeling like something's really radically wrong with humanity. And these things are the only thing that's been constant for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, written on petroglyphs, written in ancient texts, and written through mystical experiences. And so I just look at the patterns, like, why are they not showing up in mass necessarily? Well, because it's trying to create the situation we're in. Well, what do they get out of it? Well, they get a lot of death. They get a lot of pain. They get a lot of fear. They get a lot of rapidly advancing information. And the ecosystem is like going into a fucking crazy state of entropy at all times. You know this more than anyone, being at the CIA. That just seems like the most stressful job in the world. Every day you get someone to hand you a file of where else something's burning on Earth.
It never stops. And it does get to you. And you look at that and you say, is this the human condition? I mean, people always say, I remember Michelle Obama, who I really, really respect, but she made a comment, something along the lines, when there was something was going wrong, or some people were causing problems, and she said, we're better than that. And I don't think we are. I think some of us are, but I think there's a good deal of people that are not.
But I also think that its intentions of what it's trying to achieve is they only get what they need through the free will choice of our psychological behaviors. So like it plays a part in it. Like our consciousness in what we think and what we feel and what we do plays a major component into what it needs. And I think that again, that boils back to, I think that we are being pitted against each other to create a lot of chaos, because what happens when you make decisions out of fear? Like if you're really scared of something, like you're going to make decisions that are really mundane decisions where you might not leave your house. You might not date somebody. You might scream at someone you love. Everything. If you were a really scared individual and had trauma in your life, you end up really kind of hurting yourself and the people around you, because everything you see is through that lens. So what happens when the entire earth is seeing life through that lens? You really end up decreasing your humanity and decreasing your consciousness. You're not evolving. So I guess my point is boils down to the intentions and what it needs from us, UFOs in general and its occupants. It needs us to make our own decisions in a state of chaos, because over time it'll decrease our attachment to source, and then we will be able to be used and utilized by that consciousness in a way that we probably don't even understand. Maybe it's a form of possession, like coming into our bodies. Maybe it's a form of hacking the energetic source of our soul where it can be a part of that. Who knows? But maybe it can't achieve any of that if we're super aware of what it is and we're super in love and we're like compassionate and we're like hippies and growing like the Native American tribe that's at one with nature, or in the movie Avatar where we're connected to animals and to plant life and we look at everything as beauty. If we're really, really evolved, maybe it has no chance to inhabit. But if it can deceive us and we make weird decisions to end up further away from source, then it can come in. And if it wanted to do that really fast, what better way than to have World War I, World War II, World War III, terrorism, like murder, like skin color issues and religion issues. And that's the way I think. So these are the crazy answers.
What you're talking about, right? Love, compassion, and forgiveness. And once you connect with that through the source, I mean, we used to talk about the idea of awareness. So I think you're right out of money with all that. And I think that's probably why we got along so well when we first met. I sort of saw that in you, that sort of a, kindred spirit. I'm certainly a lot older than you, but nevertheless, you seem to have an older soul than most people that I've known in my lifetime.
Delonge in pratica sostiene che gli insetti o le intelligenze non umane maligne ci hanno messo gli uni contro gli altri e lo hanno fatto in modo che il nostro DNA evolvesse artificiosamente, selezionando quelli che per loro erano i tratti interessanti o più probabilmente sopprimendo i tratti che ci rendevano potenti. Nolan terrà una lezio brevis di genetica e riteniamo che sia un privilegio poter ascoltare un professore di Stanford che spiega argomenti molto complessi in modo semplice, come piace a noi.
Because the suggestion that's being made by a lot of people who claim to have had experiences with the phenomenon is that whoever they are, this superior intelligence is tinkering with human DNA.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people come to me about the whole DNA thing, and are they, I think there's a lot more ways you can guide a species other than directly interacting with its DNA. I mean, look at what we've done with dogs over just a few tens of thousands of years.
Can I ask you one thing? I read a Hungarian scientist's paper. He's a mathematician, and he looked at the probabilities of DNA sequences, and he suggested that there are anomalies in human DNA that suggest some kind of intervention.
Is this the wow signal paper?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, mathematically it's sound. The only problem is that if you're, let's say, if you're a reader of Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene and how complexity can arise out of selection, the counter to the mathematics is that selection can create something which is statistically low. The thing that I find most interesting, though, about that the wow signal in the DNA code is how ordered it is in terms of, like, if somebody were to sit down and say, this is how I want to design something, I'm going to design it in a nicely ordered way. It is strangely ordered, which the only way you can, I think, countenance it is to say there's something about the structure of life that required that order. So you either created the order because you designed it, or the structure of life required it, and that's why it came out to be looking like somebody made it.
Because when you think about Christian theology, Islam, a lot of the great religions, all of it's about superior beings coming from the sky. Mm-hmm. There's often, as in Ezekiel in the Bible, descriptions of strange craft. A lot of it does sound like UFOs, right. UAPs.
Well, Jacques Vallée actually took that approach in his book, The Wonders in the Sky, where he went back literally into the libraries to get the original documents from the scientists and statesmen of the day who had recorded these events, which if you basically just changed or translated the words, they were basically had encountered UFOs at the time, shields in the sky, etc. And then Diana Pasulka on the other side of things has looked at this from the standpoint, what got her interested, which she was actually originally studying the ecstasies of the saints. She's a theologian of Catholicism. She was studying the ecstasies of the saints and very often their interaction with angels, as they said. And what she found fascinating is that many of these angels showed up as white orbs. And then it kind of clicked in her head that this was the same story of people who were seeing UFOs. white orbs that would come and interact with them. So here you have a religious tradition, a couple of thousand years old, very well written, where we laud people and turned them into saints for their interaction with orbs of light. And yet when you turn around and hear it from the neighbor down the street, they're ridiculous.
I said this before, is you don't need, if you're a non-human intelligence, you don't need to interfere with humans directly, genetically, to change the outcome of evolution. Show yourself in different ways to a given group to influence the decisions that they might make. And that can have a huge outcome in evolution as to who wins the battle. And unfortunately, evolution is always talked about in military terms. But you just need to show yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you just need to have one group win a battle versus those that doesn't, and then all of history changes.
I'm just saying that there's way more subtle ways to interact with a species evolution than directly engineering their DNA. I mean, the mutations will show up anyway, just as a matter of course. And, you know, if it really is all about making sure that that individual lives and spreads their genes, right? I mean, we do this with dogs all the time, right? We breed dogs without doing any genetic engineering, and look at what we've done in just a few thousand years. It's interesting. Evolution, as I said before, doesn't care about time. DNA doesn't care about time. We're sort of the first level of civilization that was achieved out of competition, right? The tribe that was more competitive than the other, and frankly more aggressive, and that frankly had, you know, narcissistic, psychopathic leaders that were willing to unite a continent, you know, at the expense of blood, were the ones that succeeded. But as we're seeing played out in today's politics, without getting political, that's not necessarily a survival trait for a species.
Right. It's short-term win, long-term loss.
Long-term loss. So is the long-term play for evolution the creation of a certain level of complexity that either realizes it needs to get rid of that aggression, or there will be a collapse, rise, until the genetics is selected for that. There's an interesting study that was done, and I don't remember who did it and whether it was validated or not, but it was shown that in women after wars, that it was more likely for the women's boy children to be homosexual.
Interesting.
Okay, why? Okay, what? And the postulate was that they would be less aggressive. And so there's kind of an encoding in the woman to fear of a problem, times of stress, that, okay, we need to lower the aggression in the males because they're getting out of control. Okay, now, does this happen? There's certainly other cases showing that the grandmother who is starved has a baby, and if it's a woman, is epigenetically programmed to have a child who is more likely to gain weight. So there's this, it's an epigenetic programming event. You can basically, there was a big thing between Darwinians and Lamarckians back in the day. Lamarck was his idea was that a giraffe's neck gets longer because it was reaching for it. And somehow that gets encoded into the DNA.
Do you think we are created for our environment, or are we a product of evolution, or maybe a little bit of both?
Well, I don't like to get into anthropomorphisms as to whether we are created per se. Let's just say that the environment is such that it allowed for something like us to become, right? So the universe is constructed in a way that allows for life to live. Now, how it was constructed, whether it was purposefully constructed by something or whether it was just fundamentally a part of reality that meant it had to happen, those are two very different things. One implies an intent. The other is just, this is how it is and it has to be. Now, why it has to be, I'll leave that to the physicists and to the philosophers. I'm just going to deal with what is. And so what is a world of particles that if they, and this borrows quite heavily from the selfish gene hypothesis, that if you can access resources and make more copies of something, you will, right? So that's the whole selfish gene idea, that given a limited amount of opportunity, but an infinite amount of time for something to occur, if it does occur in a way that allows for it then to self-perpetuate and it has access to resources, it will. So you don't need any other reason than the ability to self-replicate for something to begin to self-replicate. And once something starts to self-replicate, it then comes into competition with other things that are trying to self-replicate. And that's where evolution happens, right? That's where you start to vary the way that you replicate to outcompete something else. And this becomes especially important as resources become limited. Unlimited resources, there's no evolution, right? Or not much reason for evolution. But once resources start getting limited, that's when evolution occurs. Let's say that you wanted to postulate a higher intelligence involvement in human history. That involvement doesn't need to be a genetic engineering manipulation event. It could just be purposefully putting together tribes with the right features that, when bred together, would have a higher or a better set of what we call phenotypes, brain phenotypes or whatever, than either of the parental tribes, right? So you could guide groups together in ways, and you could put them through, let's say, wars. You force them into wars to wean out the strong. So you could do it without a single bit of intervention. I mean, just look at what we've done with dogs over just a few thousand years. We've taken them from wolves to everything from fluffy little balls of Pomeranian to, giant mastiffs. And I mean, dogs are particularly pliable because of some genetic elements in their DNA that allows for that kind of pliability. Unlike cats, for instance, you can't manipulate cat evolution quite as quickly as you can dogs. But, that's what I think could have been. You don't have to say they specifically intervened in this way. And anything of a higher intelligence, frankly, is not going to need to use the kind of crude genetic engineering that we use. It would be far more subtle than what we're doing. And that kind of loops back to my discussions with Lex about the compacted information inside of human DNA. This idea that, human DNA is a zip file, right? Within a zip file, within a zip file, within a zip file, within a zip file, ad infinitum. And each layer of the unpacking, as I had said there, expects a context. So the unpacking program, the zip unzipper, is the point in time at which the DNA is present in the cell at a stage of development of the egg to a baby, right? And so the zip file is unzipped in different ways in different cells, but there's new information every time it unzips it. And yet, as I said before, it's only 3 billion base pairs long, and yet there is 10 to the gazillionth power of information somehow packed into it, because it is expecting the unzipping program to mold the DNA into certain outcomes. So the universe in a way, is part of the unzipping program that the cells at the origination point of an egg uses to unzip and then divide, and now it's two, and then now it's becoming the top of the body and the bottom of the body, the head, etc. And so to me, that's fascinating because, again, now let's go to this idea of a higher level intelligence intervention. To manipulate a human body to evolve something better requires a near godlike level of understanding to do the manipulations, so that when you change this DNA here, this base pair here, it will have resonating effects up and down the whole growth of the body. So you have to somehow encompass a knowledge of that one change might have a disastrous effect later on in development of the brain.
Grazie alla genetica, alla riproduzione e al libero arbitrio, ma artificiosamente, facendo riprodurre principalmente chi fa azioni molto negative verso altri umani, facendo riprodurre chi vince una guerra, quindi una selezione del più forte, che si è sempre pensato essere normale. Naturalmente non dovete pensare agli ultimi 50 anni in Europa, ma almeno agli ultimi 10.000 anni. Pensate ad una qualsiasi guerra tribale, o a Gengis Khan, o ai romani e ai loro schiavi. Siamo quindi un perfetto esempio negativo di eugenetica. Il concetto di eugenetica fu introdotto da Sir Francis Galton, cugino di Charles Darwin, nella seconda metà del XIX secolo. Galton propose l'idea che le caratteristiche umane desiderabili, come l'intelligenza e la salute, potessero essere promosse attraverso la selezione controllata della riproduzione. Gli esseri umani utilizzano da millenni la selezione genetica negli animali e nelle piante per potenziare caratteristiche desiderate come la produttività, la resistenza alle malattie e la conformazione fisica. Questo avviene attraverso pratiche di allevamento selettivo, incroci mirati e più recentemente l'uso di tecnologie di ingegneria genetica. Questi interventi mirano ad ottimizzare le prestazioni degli animali per specifici scopi agricoli, commerciali o di compagnia, mantenendo al contempo la salute e il benessere degli animali. Ecco qua un perfetto esempio. Questo toro da riproduzione di 1250 kg, selezionato in poche decine di anni, ha vinto un premio nella sua categoria. Tra l'altro il suo nome è Big Bang. Esiste anche un termine specifico utilizzato principalmente per garantire la purezza della razza negli animali domestici e da allevamento, per descrivere la provenienza e le credenziali. Il pedigree. Quante generazioni ci sono in 70.000 anni di storia dell'Homo sapiens? Per calcolare il numero di generazioni dobbiamo considerare l'intervallo di tempo medio tra una generazione e l'altra. Questo intervallo di tempo è comunemente stimato tra i 20 e i 25 anni. Quindi in 70.000 anni di storia dell'Homo sapiens ci sono approssimativamente tra 2.800 e 3.500 generazioni. Per calcolare il numero di generazioni necessarie per ridurre la frequenza di un allele dal 90% allo 0,01%, utilizzeremo lo stesso modello matematico della selezione naturale. Ci vorrebbero circa 87 generazioni per ridurre la frequenza di un allele recessivo dal 90% allo 0,01%. Quindi, se bastano circa 90 generazioni, secondo voi, in 2800 generazioni, cioè 70.000 anni, quanto ci siamo modificati utilizzando il nostro libero arbitrio? E l'essere umano, com'era decine e decine di migliaia di anni fa? Ci hanno quindi condizionati per 70.000 anni a fare guerre e scelte sbagliate, guidati dalla paura e dall'ansia, anziché dall'amore. In questo modo siamo stati allontanati dalla spiritualità, dalla sorgente, dalla coscienza collettiva, o da Dio se preferite chiamarlo così. Siamo sicuri che il percorso di sviluppo che abbiamo intrapreso negli ultimi 10.000 anni sia stato quello giusto per noi? Forse il nostro sviluppo tecnologico sarebbe dovuto andare avanti di pari passo con quello spirituale, non religioso, ma spirituale. Che differenze ci sono tra spiritualità e religione? Lo saprete sicuramente tutti, ma rivediamole un momento. La religione si riferisce a un sistema organizzato di credenze, pratiche e riti che si riferiscono ad un'entità o a un gruppo di divinità. Le religioni spesso hanno strutture istituzionali, testi sacri e dogmi. Hanno una struttura gerarchica con leader religiosi come preti, imam, rabbini, luoghi di culto, chiese, moschee, templi e rituali prestabiliti. La spiritualità è un'esperienza personale e soggettiva che implica la ricerca di un significato più profondo nella vita, spesso in relazione ad una forza o energia superiore. La spiritualità non necessita di un'adesione ad una particolare dottrina o pratica religiosa. È un caso quindi che la nuova teologia eliminerà riti e l'esaltazione dei concetti religiosi, che saranno sostituiti da concetti di insegnamento che dovranno essere messi in pratica direttamente in ogni manifestazione della vita quotidiana? Chissà oggi quanto saremmo evoluti sia tecnologicamente che spiritualmente se non ci avessero influenzato. E questa dichiarazione di David Grush, già pubblicata sul canale, oggi come la interpretiamo?
If I was a betting man, some of this NHI, they're similarly as advanced as us, but they've asymmetric evolution or whatever. They went a different path where we made nuclear weapons and stuff. They ended up making this like civil propulsion kind of equivalent discovery where they're able to do this now, but they're actually not that much more advanced than you and I.
Potremmo interpretarla ritenendo che altre civiltà non sono state influenzate dai parassiti e hanno seguito un percorso normale. Se oggi siamo così avanzati tecnologicamente, come facciamo a progredire il nostro livello spirituale, tanto quello tecnologico? Leggiamo qualche riga della nuova teologia della religione cattolica. La nuova teologia abbraccerà la scienza e saranno una cosa sola. Lo scienziato svilupperà processi tecnologici a beneficio dell'intera società, basati sulla legge dello spirito, mentre la persona religiosa svilupperà filosofia spirituale e i suoi concetti si fonderanno con lo sviluppo della tecnologia. Così la nuova teologia insegnerà che siamo una cosa con l'essere che vive dentro di noi, l'anima, l'energia, che ci permea con la sua luce creativa e vitale. Oggi abbiamo capito che ci siamo manipolati geneticamente da soli, per migliaia di anni, attraverso il libero arbitrio e la riproduzione. È passato troppo tempo per poter risolvere la questione autonomamente, che si sarebbe potuta risolvere con una semplice meditazione. È noto infatti che la meditazione può influenzare l'espressione genica attraverso vari meccanismi biologici. La meditazione modifica la metilazione del DNA e la modifica degli istoni. La metilazione del DNA aggiunge gruppi metilici al DNA, cambiando l'attività dei geni senza alterare la sequenza. La modifica degli istoni cambia il modo in cui il DNA è avvolto intorno alle proteine istoniche, influenzando l'accessibilità dei geni. La meditazione può ridurre l'espressione di geni pro-infiammatori. Questo avviene attraverso la regolazione dei percorsi molecolari che controllano la produzione di molecole infiammatorie, portando ad una minore infiammazione nel corpo. La meditazione riduce l'espressione dei geni associati alla risposta allo stress, come quelli che producono il cortisolo, l'ormone dello stress. Questo avviene modulando i segnali chimici nel cervello che attivano la risposta allo stress. La meditazione aumenta l'attività della telomerasi, l'enzima che aiuta a mantenere la lunghezza dei telomeri, le protezioni alle estremità dei cromosomi. Telomeri più lunghi sono associati ad una maggiore longevità cellulare. La meditazione può alterare l'espressione dei geni che regolano la funzione immunitaria, migliorando la capacità del corpo di combattere le infezioni e riducendo le risposte autoimmuni. La meditazione aumenta l'espressione del fattore neurotrofico, derivato dal cervello, BDNF, una proteina che supporta la sopravvivenza dei neuroni e la plasticità sinaptica, migliorando la salute cerebrale e le funzioni cognitive. Questi meccanismi biologici dimostrano che la meditazione possa avere un impatto profondo sull'espressione genica e di conseguenza sulla salute e il benessere complessivi. E intendiamo proprio la meditazione praticata per decenni, non il protocollo CE5 che forse vi mette in contatto con un'intelligenza artificiale e che sfrutta il vostro libero arbitrio per creare una connessione. E quella connessione permanente che avete stabilito con il protocollo CE5 è univoca o biunivoca? E cosa potrebbe fare in futuro l'intelligenza con cui vi siete collegati, con cui avete aperto questo canale? Come possiamo essere certi che il canale aperto non sia a loro vantaggio, che magari stiano solo aspettando il momento giusto per agire, sfruttando un'opportunità che possono cogliere solo se con il nostro libero arbitrio gli abbiamo dato il permesso? Quindi, questo testo che abbiamo inserito alla fine dell'episodio numero 50. Il cambiamento dovrà avvenire per legge dell'evoluzione. Altri esseri discesi dalle stelle o da mondi evoluti saranno inviati dall'intelligenza cosmica per aiutare l'evoluzione umana. Come lo interpretate alla luce delle informazioni acquisite oggi? Se avete immaginato angeli mandati da Dio che arrivano da altri pianeti ad aiutarci, allora non siete stati attenti e avete un bias cognitivo molto forte. Leggete sempre tutte le parole e valutate tutte le opzioni, non solo quelle più vicine al vostro modo di pensare. Non c'è la parola angeli, nemmeno quella pianeti, nemmeno la parola Dio. E questa è la nuova teologia della Chiesa Cattolica. Ma abbiamo stelle o mondi evoluti e soprattutto la parola evoluzione è la più importante, ripetuta per ben 2 volte, legge dell'evoluzione e aiutare l'evoluzione umana. Oggi conosciamo anche il perché. La nostra evoluzione, frutto di incroci selettivi guidati dalla legge del più forte, è stata influenzata da apparizioni di vario genere e decisioni errate in momenti cruciali. Per almeno 70.000 anni, grazie al nostro libero arbitrio, abbiamo seguito un percorso evolutivo distorto. Probabilmente l'unico modo di risolvere la questione ora è con un intervento esterno, qualcuno appunto che ci modificherà il DNA. Forse un giorno un'intelligenza superiore entrerà nella nostra realtà per guidarci verso un'evoluzione che rispecchi il vero potenziale dell'essere umano. Questo perché un'altra forza ci ha ingannato, costringendoci a seguire un percorso evolutivo distorto, utile solo ai loro scopi. Inoltre sembra che ogni 3.000 anni queste entità ritornino, causando la scomparsa di civiltà già in crisi.
There's these things trying to come through, but they can't come through naturally unless our bodies are prepared for them. And how do you do that? How do you detach a body from its main source? I mean, maybe you do it through fear and war and famine and anger and like things that make you less evolved as a person. UFOs in general and its occupants. It needs us to make our own decisions in a state of chaos, because over time it'll decrease our attachment to source, and then we will be able to be used and utilized by that consciousness in a way that we probably don't even understand.
Not only did Atlantis truly exist, I believe, I think it's cyclical, and I think humanity has risen and fallen based off of deceit and design of the UFO phenomenon.